Where did it all go wrong? A question that can so often haunt us. There's the story of George Best and how he'd spent the day at the horse racing with the recently crowned Miss World. They'd won several £1,000s at the races, and they then went back to their hotel room and put all the money that they'd won on the bed so that they could count it. The money went right along the bed. There was that much of it. Just then the hotel waiter arrived with the 2 bottles of champagne that they'd ordered. And mindful of Best's recent early retirement from football, the waiter looked at George Best. He then looked at Miss World. He looked at all of the money in the bed and then the 2 bottles of champagne that he'd brought for them. He simply shook his head and asked, "George, where did it all go wrong? Where did it all go wrong?" A question that perhaps we could ask of Judas Iscariot as well, as we read about his leaving the group of disciples, the group that he'd been friends with for the last 3 years, leaving them behind so that he could betray Jesus. There have been a number of different suggestions put forward as to why this happened. For example, it's been suggested that Judas betrayed Jesus simply because he was greedy and he saw the crowds that were following Jesus as an opportunity of making money. And the fact that Judas was in charge of the disciples' money bag does indicate that he did have a certain gravity towards money. It's also been suggested that he simply wasn't as close to Jesus as the others were, and he didn't have the same relationship with their leader as the others had. An additional suggestion has been that Judas believed, as many did, that the promised Messiah would be a fighter warrior who would overthrow Roman occupation and would then rule over all of Israel. And when Jesus made it clear that this wasn't his plans, perhaps Judas got angry at the wasted years that he believed he'd spent in following Jesus. We can't be sure, but what we do know is that this was the last night that Judas would sit amongst Jesus and his friends. Once he walked out the door, things would change forever for them all. This part of Holy Week is sometimes referred to as Spy Wednesday because of Judas's actions in his betrayal of Jesus. There's a spy in the midst of the story, a spy sitting amongst the group, a spy eating, drinking and joking. But only 2 people gathered at the table are aware of it. And it's so often the case that the worst hurt that we can experience is when it comes from those who are closest to us. Those who we share our deepest thoughts and secrets with. Those who we believe we can rely on to be there for us when nobody else will. And oh, how it hurts when we feel let down and betrayed by them. How it must have hurt Jesus knowing that when he washed the feet of Judas, these same feet would be shortly leaving the room in order to bring Jesus' journey on earth to its conclusion. How it must have hurt as they shared a meal together, knowing that this time of fellowship and sharing with one another would ultimately end in the way that it did. Jesus knew that there was a spy amongst them. He knew what was happening and what was about to happen. But he carried on anyway. Jesus chose to persist. A reminder for us that even when our faith in others, or even our faith in God at times gets shaken, when we are left hurt and perhaps filled with regrets, we can still persist. Jesus shows that there is another way, a way that speaks of commitment and love, a love that shines when the darkness attempts to snuff it out, a way that enables us to remain sure and steadfast when the road we travel seems to be leading us in the wrong direction. It's a reminder that as we travel through Holy Week, with all of our burdens, all of our thoughts, all of our worries, we can fix our eyes upon Jesus and persist. Not through our own abilities, but through our confidence in the love that Christ has for us. A confidence that assures that no matter what we bring with us today, nothing, and that is nothing, is ever greater than the love that God has for us.